Hi all, and welcome to your math lesson. If I can find it, there it is, where we are continuing to work on percentages. Here is something that you can do now. You could pause the video and have a go at doing all of these if you wanted to. Can you tell me which percentage of the grid is shaded in each colour? And then generate statements about them. Now, by generate statements about them, I mean you could either come up with stories about them, or you could just simply say, oh, there are this many of something, or there are this many reds, or this many grey ones, or there are twice as many of this as that, or something along those lines. So you can pause the video now and have a go at those. Okay, welcome back. I'm not going to go through all of these, but some of them. Let's just have a look at this one in the middle first. Should I put it back there? But so we could say, for example, that we know that this is a 100 square, which is absolutely fine, good place to start. And we would start by saying, okay, well, what percentage of them are yellow then? I know I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I can say there are 8% yellow. What percentage of them are grey? Well, I know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So now I've got 20% grey, and so on. There are many things you could do. You could then say, oh, there are 12% more grey than yellow, or there are 12% fewer yellows than greys, or because there are 28% shaded, then there must be 72% left white. All sorts of different statements that you could work on for those. No new star words today, but a reminder of the things that we're looking out for. We are talking about percentages, and these are the key terms that we're working on. And remembering that our percentage sign looks like this. It looks like either it kind of looks a little bit like 100, or it's got a 1 and the 2 zeros. And of course, remember, it looks like a fraction of something. It's like something over something. And that's how we remember that percentages, we're talking about something to do with hundreds, percent out of 100. And we're also talking about fractional amounts of something. Okay, here is a question that we might get. Now, as we move on through this topic, we will be adding percentages onto our knowledge of decimals and fractions. And I hope that you can see why they're all similar things, because we're talking about sum of a whole amount. For example, if I'm talking of half of something, I might say I have 100 beads, for example, on this string, and I want to take half of them. But I can see they've been split into half, the half on the left and the half on the right. How many beads is in each half? There are a number of ways that I could work this out. Obviously, I could count the beads, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and work out that 50 of the 100 are put to one side and 50 on the other. Or, of course, I know that I'm trying to find an equivalent fraction here because I have an equal sign. So I'm trying to find what fraction is equal to how many hundreds. So 1/2, to find an equivalent fraction over 100, well, I need to multiply the denominator by 50. Is that what I did at the top as well? Well, yes, it was. 1 times 50 is 50. Now, if you think back to the previous lesson, what we also worked out was that something over 100 is also how we express it as a fraction, because it's 50 out of 100, isn't it? 50%. 50 out of the 100, 50% and a half. They're all equal to each other. They're all different ways of saying the same thing. Now, if you're not quite sure, if you're scratching your head going, I don't understand that quite now, go back and watch that bit of the video again, because there are all the different ways of expressing the same thing. And I'd thoroughly recommend you get confident in that before moving on to this next part. What we are looking at is percentage and fractions being equivalent to each other. Now, we've done fraction, decimal, equivalence. Now, remember, equivalent means there are different ways of saying the same thing. For example, 0.5 and a half. There are two ways of expressing the same idea, the same amount of something. So, if we want to convert a fraction into a percentage, here is what we have to do. First, we write out the fraction. So this time we have a quarter. Now we need to work out how many that is as a fraction over 100. So I'm finding an equivalent fraction to a quarter as a fraction where 100 is the denominator. So what have I had to do from 4 to get to 100? I had to multiply it by 25. So what do I need to do to the top? I need to do exactly the same thing. 25 hundredths, 25 out of the 100, 25%. And you can see that represented in the B strings as well. I've got one group of 10, 20, 5 there. 10, add 10, add 10. And it's been split into equal quarters. So there's one set there, there's one quarter, another quarter, which is 25, so 50 in total, another quarter of 25, 75 in total, and my last set, my last quarter of 25, making in total 100 beads. Let's do exactly the same steps again with the bottom. So if you're still scratching your head a little bit, remember the step-by-step. This is a very step-by-step lesson, a very step-by-step process. So I have a fraction and I want to convert it to a percentage. Here is what I need to do. The first thing I need to do is convert it to an equivalent fraction over 100. Just like I'm doing here. What have I had to do to get from 5 to 100? I've had to multiply by 20. Now, these are the sorts of things we should be able to just instantly know in our head. 25 times 4 is 100. 20 times 5 is 100. 10 times 10 is 100. 8 times 12 and a half is 100. 50 times 2 is 100. All of those things we should know off the top of our head. However, if we don't, it might be time for you to get out a piece of pen and paper and jot some of these ones down that I'm going to give you now. 1 times 100 equals 100. Very useful piece of information, a very obvious piece of information. Another one that we should all know. And don't forget, write this down if you're not sure about it. This is things that we should have remembered in our head by now, but if we don't, always good to write them down. 10 times 10 is 100. 2 times 50 is 100. 4 times 25 is 100. 5 times 20 is 100. And the last one, which is going to be useful for us later, that we did talk about earlier this week, was 8 times 12.5 equals 100. Now, don't worry if you don't remember that one off the top of your head all the time, but the rest of them, these ones in particular, we really, really need to know. So if you're not quite done, pause the video now because we are going to move on. Okay, here is what you need to do. You are going to convert these fractions to a percentage. So remember, step 1, we need to convert it to a fraction over 100. So what have I done here? Therefore, what must I do there? And then what is that as a percentage? So for example, if I was, let's do this first one together. I've got 6/10, I need to convert it to a fraction over 100. what have I done to do what do I multiply 10 by to get to 100? Well, don't forget, you can keep referring back to this slide if you want. Remember, I encourage you to write those down. That was for a reason. They are going to help you. So what have I multiplied 10 by to get to 100? Well, of course, the answer is 10. So whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. And 6 multiplied by 10 is 60. So 6 tenths is equal to 60 hundredths, which is 60 out of 100, 60%. Have a go at that for the rest of them. Please pause the video now. Okay, welcome back. Don't worry if you are getting a little bit lost with these. Remember, again, I'm going to encourage you, if you are getting stuck with this bit, I don't know what to multiply the denominator by to get to 100. I'm going to encourage you to write these down somewhere. At the end of the year, or at the end of year 6 or whatever, it would be really useful to have those in your long-term memory. It might be useful to have them in your long-term memory now. Things like 4 times 25 is 100, 5 times 20 is 100. They're going to help us out so much with questions like this. If you haven't got them in your short-term memory yet, or in your long-term memory yet, that is fine. Write them down on a piece of paper. Okay, so I'm just going to rattle through these quite quickly. For those of you who have done it at home, I know you'll just want to be checking your answers. So 3/4, I need to work out how many that is over 100. Well, to get from 4 to 100, I had to multiply by 25. I have to do the same then to the top. 3 times 25 is 75, which means 75 hundredths, 75%. Remember when my fraction is just some hundredths? Basically saying 75 out of the 100, equal parts, 75%. Okay, next one, 2/5. Well, I need to express that as some hundredths. 5 times 20 is 100, 2 times 20 is 40, 40%. I don't know if you got that one right. 3/5 as a number of hundredths. Again, 5 times 20 is 100, so I need to do the same to the top. 3 times 20 is 60, 60%. 1/50, well, 50 multiplied by 2 is 100. 1 times 2 is 2, so that would be 2%. And the last one, 1/20 as a fraction over 100. I had to multiply it by 5, so I need to multiply the numerator by 5. 1 times 5 is 5. Give me the answer, 5%. Here is your independent task for today. It is to be done on the Google Slides, okay? Not on there's no worksheet to go with this. It's to be done on the slides here. So you each have a version of these slides. As you can see, it's a table where everything along the row is equal to each other, okay? So 1/1 as a fraction is 1 as a decimal, and that is equal. That is 100%. There are all different ways of saying 1 whole. 1/1, 100%. Okay, now I've done the next one for you as well. The fraction is 1/2. The decimal equivalent is 0.5, and then the percentage is 50%. Okay, you need to fill in the rest of the gaps. Now, these two here, you need to know, remember, from the top of your head. These are something that we've gone over many, many times. But if you have missed a few lessons, you can go back to lesson 1 from this week, where I talked about fraction and decimal equivalence, where we talked about 1/4 being equal to 0.25, 3/4 being equal to 0.75, and so on and so on. This bottom one here, if you are struggling with the rest, I'm going to encourage you to leave that bottom one. However, if you're finding the rest of them quite easy, the bottom one might be a bit of a challenge for you to do. This is not a very long activity, but because all of the answers are available in various videos over this week, it is one that I'm expecting you to be getting everything right on. So if you're still not sure, If you're not sure, don't just guess. Don't just go, oh, so 1/10, that must be 1.10, and it's going to be 110%. Like that. You can't just write it out what it looks like, but replacing the decimal points with the punctuation and things like that. Okay? You really need to make sure that you are understanding what these things are and why as well. Okay? Over to you.